Dolan, can I just take you to funding issues with the ATSB? Has your agency recently applied for redundancy funding, supplementary funding to support redundancies?
Yes, Senator.
When did the budget pressures commence that led to your requirement to bid for supplementary funding around redundancies?
We've been signalling for a considerable period of time, Senator, that the forward estimates would require us to reduce our staff because we'd found all other savings mechanisms and used them already. And having had discussions with various parties, we concluded that to find a sustainable position going into next financial year, into 2014-15, that we needed to undertake a redundancy program with our staff. And as a result of that, by the start of next financial year, we'll have reduced our staff by 12, from 110 to 98.
And so that funding you're applying for, that's coming from the funding that was given to finance as part of the MyUFO process, is that correct?
That's correct, Senator.
Okay. So in practice then, these 12 staff that you're losing because of decisions of the former government, but the current government is having to fund it because the former government, whilst leading to the redundancies, didn't fund you to actually make those people redundant?
The decisions in relation to staffing were based on the forward estimates as they were recorded in the portfolio budget statements of the last budget. We had contemplated a staff separation program from our own resources, given we had reserves, but given there was a government policy decision to make funding available to support those staff separations, we applied for it and success as a result.
So how much redundancy funding did you receive in 13-14 and how much for 2014 and 15?
In 13-14, Senator, we received around about $800,000 and in 14-15 around about $600,000.
Okay. You'll obviously remember very clearly during the this committee's inquiry into aviation accidents that we touched on the issue of funding. Can you tell us how many times in recent years has ATSB incurred operating losses or been at risk of operating losses, and how many times have you taken up with finance or your relevant minister the question of your funding level and service expectations?
We've projected an operating loss for 3 years ago, Senator, we incurred an actual operating loss, and for the last 2 years we projected an operating loss. We've projected an operating loss of $750,000 for this year.
Okay.
And those matters have been brought to the attention of the ministers at the time.
Okay, I'll come back to that a little bit later. Is it possible, do you believe that you may need to seek further redundancy funding in the 14-15 round? We don't believe so, Senator. The aim of running a focused redundancy program in the last quarter of this financial year was to give us a sustainable position into the future. But it's taken up until this point, and the funding coming out of MyUFO for you to adjust to the cost pressures and the staff reductions that resulted from the previous government.
It's taken us to this point, Senator, because consistent with the policy of both the former government and the current government, we looked first to non-staffing costs as the best way of meeting increasing budget pressures. Having satisfied ourselves that there were no further savings to be achieved there, we inevitably had to look to staff costs.
Sure.